When the Suburban pulled up in front of the Arrow Sea Ranch house, Tag kept his seat for a moment and stared at it. It was just like Roxy to choose a simple yet classic name when she'd turned it into a bed and breakfast. Roxy had grown up in this huge house, and so Tag had spent a good deal of time there as well. The perusing he'd done online showed that she'd kept much of the house the same, structure-wise. Still 16 rooms, like they'd always touted the Victorian-era mansion at the local museum. Roxy's fourth great-grandfather had built it for his wife when they'd moved out west from New York in the 1800s, and it had stayed in the family for 7 generations now. It was on the county register of historic homes, although the inside didn't look anything like the pictures Tag had seen from its early days. Each generation had updated the home and kept it up, so the decor had changed over the years. Roxy's mom had worked with the antique pieces that had remained with the house, but it had always been a stylish mix of modern and classic. Roxy had kept that look, so the pictures on the website had taken Tag back to the days when they would lounge on the big sectional in the open living area that looked into the kitchen. That homey look was still there, although the dining table looked newer and much less lived on. The ranch house boasted that visitors could spend the weekend as special guests of the family. "So this is the place where you're going to write your greatest album yet," Bo said from beside him, snapping Tag out of his reverie. "This place holds a lot of memories," Tag assured him, same as he had been for the last several weeks. Bo hadn't argued with Tag's proposal that they all take a nice vacation, nor the venue once Tag explained what it would do for his creative juices. He did mind the out-of-the-way location and the fact that Little River did not have a Starbucks. "It's beautiful." Tag's assistant Quinn leaned over the seat to get a better look out the windows. "Do I get to ride a horse?" "If you want to," Bo said. "Tag's got the whole thing rented out just for us, and since he's supposed to be taking it easy, maybe you can too." Quinn grinned. "You're scared she's going to kick you out?" Bo turned to Tag and asked in a low voice, smirking himself. "She's not going to kick me out," Tag said. That was a bluff. She could try, but Tag doubted the ranch house manager would let her. They wouldn't be able to replace the guests that they must have turned down to accommodate Tag renting out all the rooms to have privacy. He pushed open his door the same time Roxy and another woman stepped out onto the porch. The woman with chin-length brown hair waved, but her hand froze in midair when Tag got out of the Suburban. It wasn't until Roxy yanked the woman's hand down that she came to life again. "Welcome to the Arrow Sea," the woman called, hurrying down the steps ahead of Roxy, who glared daggers in his direction. The woman glanced over her shoulder, then rushed up to Bo. "You must be Bo? I'm Bellamy, the manager." "Yes, that's me," Bo said, shaking her hand. "Mr. Dubois." Bellamy's smile wavered when she turned to Tag. "Bellamy Hanson." It had taken him a second to place her. "I know I'm a few years older than you, but I don't think that means you need to call me Mister. I think, in fact, that you once called me Tag Turner's All the Girls' Heads, and I like that." Bo choked on a laugh as her face turned red, but she laughed too. "Oh, middle school, such a special time," she said. "This way." She gestured for them to follow as she headed back toward the house. "Are we going to be allowed to stay?" Tag asked under his breath. Bellamy forced another laugh and didn't answer. "What a surprise," Roxy said dryly when they got to the porch. She held out a hand for Bo, which he shook. "Welcome to the Arrow Sea." "Pleased to be here," Bo said, some of the amusement at the situation disappearing from his smile, turning it more professional. "Thank you for having us." Roxy raised an eyebrow, but got the door for them, and Quinn, who had followed them up on the porch. Tag's intern, Winnie James, still stood by the Suburban, waving her phone around to try and get service. Someone ought to tell her that her big city cheap phone plan wouldn't work out here in Wyoming. Tag's bodyguard, Morgan, glanced back at her before following his employer into the house. So far, no crazy fans, so hopefully he'd get a vacation too. Bellamy walked in ahead, pointing them to the stairs that still dominated the open space of the living area at the front of the house. "We've got you all spread out over the upper 2 levels, but make sure to let us know if any special arrangements need to be made. I think I covered everything Bo let me know about." She glanced over at Morgan. He'd want the room next to Tag's, but we're happy to change things to accommodate anything else. "Sweetie," Bellamy looked past Tag to Winnie, who still held her phone up. "There's only 2 providers that work out here, Verizon and a local company. If you don't have either of those, give up." Winnie scowled and pocketed her phone. "It's called a vacation, Winnie," Tag heard Quinn murmur. Bellamy studied the group and turned back to Bo. "I thought there would be more of you. The band will show up maybe for a week or so, and we'll have some crew in to do casual videos and live feeds we have planned to hype the album, but for the most of the time, just us," Bo answered as they trooped up the stairs after Bellamy. Tag glanced over his shoulder to see if Roxy followed. She was chatting with Quinn as they came up, so studious about not looking his way that he knew she was avoiding having to talk to him. Bellamy doled out rooms as they walked along the hallway before she came to one of the biggest on this floor. Tag knew, since he and Roxy had hosted plenty of games of hide and seek out here in their early high school years. The big house had been a blast, with so many nooks and crannies to hide in. The number of times he'd cornered Roxy in some small space, intending to confess his feelings, were too many. So was the number of times he'd chickened out. A little voice in the back of his mind had whispered for years that's why she didn't believe him when he did finally get the nerve. He clenched his jaw. He'd sang enough songs with her as the star back in high school and since then to heap the evidence in her lap. Bellamy pushed open the door to the familiar room. Tag, we've got you here. But you can switch out for another one on the floor if this is weird, Roxy broke in. She forced a smile, like she was trying to come off calm, but she glanced away after she'd said it and winced. Why would this room be weird for him? Quinn, who had been given the room across the hall from Tag's bodyguard, stuck her head out of her door. Tag's face broke into a smile as he met Roxy's gaze and held it. This used to be Roxy's room growing up, and I think I'll be very comfortable in here. He waited for the outburst to come for Roxy to declare him the worst again. And Steam was for sure about to spit out her ears, but Bellamy laid a hand on her arm and Roxy took a deep breath. I grew up in this house, she said to Quinn. Disappointed in her bland response, Tag strolled into the room, the discussion with his assistant about how Roxy had opened the bed and breakfast and then built her new house fading behind him. He didn't understand why Roxy was so bent out of shape about him taking this room. It looked nothing like what it had when Roxy had lived here. It still had the same shape, a big, open square with tall windows facing the mountains, and the best view, which is why Bellamy had picked it for their mysterious celebrity, no doubt. The personal bathroom and walk-in closet sat on the opposite side of the room as the windows. But the decor was completely different. Denim blue headboard with big gray buttons had replaced Roxy's rustic wooden one, and instead of bedding and linens in shades of pink, everything was gray and blue. In the corner, where her desk had been, there was a gray cafe table and 2 upholstered blue armchair stools. The dresser was much bigger than Roxy's old one and refinished in a distressed ivory. The light fixture hanging in the middle of the room was new as well, an iron and glass thing that twinkled in the sunlight from the windows. In the final corner of the room, there was a fluffy gray couch, chair, and ottoman. He could already picture himself spread out on the couch, an ottoman, guitar in hand, strumming, Roxy leaning up against his chest. He let the daydream linger. Do you like it? Roxy asked. It took Tag a second to realize that Roxy stood in the room with him, really asking him the question. It held an edge, but her eyes said she wanted to know. It's really nice, Rox, he replied. Everything here is beautiful. That's why I knew it would be the perfect place to write my album. That, and you're here. When he'd first answered, he'd wanted to play nice, to ease Roxy into admitting she loved him as much as he did her, but like always, he couldn't help the comments that spilled out of him around her. For years, he'd been able to say whatever he wanted. She'd never taken his devotion seriously, whether it came in flirtatious comments backed by the truth or in songs, so it never mattered. This was a horrible trick to play, she snapped in a low voice. He sighed. He was tired of her anger, even if it meant he affected her more than she wanted. This is home, he said, and held up his hands when she huffed at him. Little River is home. Whether you believe it or not, you are the inspiration behind my best music, and being here in July showed me this place can really light a fire under my muse. The ranch house is the only place that could have accommodated me with the peace and quiet I needed to get the writing done without interruption. She chewed on her lip, indecision in her expression, about whether to believe him about her being an inspiration. You could have been honest. He stuck his hands in his pockets and eyed her. You wouldn't have let me come. They stared at each other for several seconds, and she didn't argue with that assumption. Just so you know, she said, her voice going cold again. No, not cold. It was more like forced indifference. I don't work here at the ranch house. You won't be seeing me at all that much. Tag pointed out the window toward the white house off in the distance, its gables and wraparound porch and the white brick, simultaneously matching both the rustic landscape around it and the proud Victorian mansion they stood in. I'll see you just as much as I need to, he smirked. Roxy whirled and stalked out of the room, the long sigh she released saying exactly what she hadn't. Tag Turner, you are the worst.